Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations present The Eternal Light, a program which comes to you under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. Today's program is the first in this Eternal Light series of 4 talks by Maurice Samuel, author and lecturer, on great Hassidic stories, adapted from Mr. Samuel's book, Prince of the Ghetto, a study of the life and work of the great Yiddish writer I.L. Peretz. Mr. Samuel.
The book you have just heard mentioned, Prince of the Ghetto, is a study of the life and the works of Yitzchak Leibush Peretz, one of the 3 pillars of classic Yiddish literature, the other 2 being Sholem Aleichem and Mendele Moches Sforim. Peretz, who was born in 1856 and died in 1915, worked in many forms: drama, poetry, the essay, social studies, even textbooks. He was deeply concerned with Jewish problems, and his Hasidic tales and folk stories were a kind of relaxation for him. But they will undoubtedly outlive, in many languages, what he took to be his most important creations. Now, there are tens of thousands of Hasidic folk tales, current, written, and oral. The Hasidic literature is as huge, and some say as rich, as the ancient biblical legends and commentaries of the rabbis. Some Hasidic stories are simply hagiography, that is, tales about holy men. Others are fables and parables. There are also countless Hasidic proverbs and sayings attributed to this or that rabbi, or as the Hasidim call a teacher, Rebbe. Whether the stories are about the miraculous, whether they are just anecdotal, they always point a moral. But there is a particular class of Hasidic story which is of special interest to the student of human psychology. I don't mean here technical psychology, the modern psychology literally of mice and men. I mean psychology in its ordinary colloquial sense. There are stories which look penetratingly into human motivation, into the springs of good and evil in the human being, and which analyze, sometimes with uncomfortable lucidity, the everyday self-deceptions and unnoticed egotisms that human beings are prone to. They give us insights into how men are tempted into evil ways. They uncover the secret places of the heart. Peretz himself was not a believing Chassid. He was a lover of Hasidism. And the Hasidic stories he has written are a mingling of old tradition and modern sophistication. He made a charming blend of these 2 worlds. He can be read with equal enjoyment by the Hasidic believer and the modern skeptic, and not only with enjoyment, but with moral profit. The first story that I shall tell may be called All for a Pinch of Snuff, and is the sad record of the fall of a saint. Not a tragic story. In fact, amusing, although if you listen carefully, you may also wince a little. It begins with the machinations of the everlasting enemy of mankind. One day, Satan, the evil one, the tempter and destroyer, sat in his private office, idly examining his account book. He sat at ease, one leg dangling over the other, a kindly, diabolical smile on his lips, and his fingers turned at random the leaves which bore the names of all the living souls on earth. Then suddenly his complacency vanished, and he clapped his palms together. He had come on the page bearing the name of the Rabbi of Chelm, and it was as blank could be. For the devil's pages recorded only the sins and not the good deeds of humanity. In this respect, his satanic majesty resembles a large number of modern authors. At the sound of the clapped hands, a host of demon flunkies came running and crowded about the door, their tongues hanging out while they waited for a word of command. "Send someone up," said Satan, "and find out whether the Rabbi of Chelm has many years to live." The demon flunkies vanished as swiftly as they had come. A quarter of an hour later, the report was handed in from the upper regions. The days of the Rabbi of Chelm were numbered. The thread of his life, worn thin to invisibility, was about to snap. It might happen tomorrow, it might happen the day after, and the man would elude the clutches of Satan if something drastic were not done, and at once. Send for the recorder. Enter the recorder, a bald-headed little goblin, light-footed and merry-eyed. A bow, a scrape, a smirk, and he seated himself cross-legged, Turkish fashion, on the sulphur-smoldering floor. From one side he drew a bottle of blood-red ink, reeking with sin, and a new crow's feather. From the other side, a sheet of parchment made from the skin of an atheist. The recorder spat in his palm and threw a submissive look at his master. Ready. Satan uncrossed his legs and leaned forward in his armchair. The recorder stuck out a fiery tongue. The quill flew across the parchment. A report and claim were indicted to the court of heaven. Whereas we are told in Holy Script, no man liveth who shall do only good and no evil. And whereas there is among the living the Rabbi of Chelm, who stands with one foot in the grave, and the debit side of his ledger is blank, therefore in order that the Torah of Moses shall be true and shall remain true, let the Rabbi of Chelm be delivered into the power of the evil one. Back came the answer, see Book of Job, chapter 1. That case Satan remembered without difficulty. It meant he could do whatever he wanted with the Rabbi of Chelm, save that against the man's life he could not put forth his hand. Such as the rabbi's days were, few or many, they had to run their course. But how was he to do with the Rabbi of Chelm what he had once done with Job? For Job had been a mighty man of substance, with 7,000 sheep and 3,000 camels, and 500 yoke of oxen, and he had had a wife and 7 sons and 3 daughters, all wealthy and living near him, and the Rabbi of Chelm, a widower, with his children married out and far away. The poor man hadn't even a goat for milk, nor could Satan afflict him with boils. He had them already. What trials and torments could you visit on a Rabbi of Chelm? Some little lust of his, murmured Satan, licking his chops. Some tiny desire, some obscure appetite. He stretched out his hand, lifted the bell, which was made from the skull of a positivist, and rang. The room filled with demon flunkies. Whom shall we send to tempt the Rabbi of Chelm from the true path? Me. The competition is fierce, no wonder. Promotion waits for the demon who can pull this one off. There's almost a riot. Finally, they draw lots. A couple of minor imps get the lucky numbers, and they are off amid a chorus of Mazel Tov, good luck. The sun shone bright that day on the marketplace of Chelm, crowded with Jews who had nothing to do. They stood about in groups, buying and selling the skins of rabbits and hares that hadn't been caught yet, cases of eggs that hadn't been laid yet, timber from trees that hadn't been felled yet. Suddenly the earth beneath their feet began to tremble. A crack as of nearby thunder split the air, and a wagon burst into the marketplace, scattering Jews right and left. A strange wagon, and stranger still its behavior. High up in front stood the driver, a ragged cap on his head, a red girdle about his loins, pulling like mad at the infuriated horses to rein them in. Behind him stood the passenger, in decent black gabardine and fur cap, holding the whip in his right hand and cracking it over the heads of the horses. The driver pulled the horses back, the passenger urged them on, and now and again the passenger drove his left fist into the driver's back. Now and again he put his fingers to his lips and emitted a piercing whistle, which made the horses start as if they had been shot. And meanwhile the driver was wailing at the top of his voice, "Jews, have pity on me. Stop the horses. Save me." But before anything could be done, The wagon had passed through the marketplace, followed by a stream of sparks. The onlookers stood paralyzed, murmuring, "God have mercy on us." The wagon drew near the slaughterhouse, and the huge dogs that hung about the place sprang at the horses' throats. The muscular butcher boys came running out, grabbed the reins, and were on the wagon in a trice. The crowd drew near. What's the meaning of it all? Nothing much. Just a little difference between the men on the wagon. The passenger in the decent black gabardine gasps that the driver has gone mad. The driver wants the horses to dawdle and graze when it's a matter of life and death to get to the next market town without delay and sell the package of diamonds. At the mention of diamonds, the crowd falls back respectfully. But the next instant, confusion returns. The driver begins to yell that he is not the driver at all. The other man is the driver. They've come a long way. In the middle of the night, the real driver put a knife to the real passenger's throat, forced him to give up the package of diamonds, and here they are. The passenger denies every word of it. He is the passenger. The other man is the driver. Who's to make head or tail of it? The crowd pulls the wagon round and leads it with passenger and driver to the rabbi's cottage. Let him find out. And the rabbi of Chelm interrogates each man separately and privately. The plaintiff first, the man dressed like a driver. And he talks like a driver, too, and looks like one. Big, coarse, massive, ignorant, a man of the woods. A voice that no cheder chant has ever tempered. But that is not enough for the rabbi of Chelm. He cross-examines. What's the value of your package of diamonds? Rabbi, don't ask me. I'm an ignorant man. Can't sign my name, to tell the truth. Can't add up a column of figures. But God has been good to me, and so I'm a dealer in diamonds. How much money is there in the bag the other man took from you? Rabbi, I never count my money. You know, it's bad luck. The man is sent from the room. He, a successful merchant. Unbelievable. The rabbi of Chelm sighs a heartbroken sigh for the wickedness of the world and asks that the other man, the passenger, be sent in. And what a contrast. From top to toe, the man of culture and learning. The rabbi feels him out with half quotations. The man caps them instantly. Talmud and Midrash and commentaries. Rabbi, cries the man, what's the good of all this? I'm in a hurry. Here. And opening the bag, he pours out on the table a heap of diamonds mixed with gold coins, blazing diamonds and flaming gold. Half yours and half mine if you say it's all mine. A faint scream from the rabbi's lips. Robber! The crowd breaks in the door. Where's the driver? Where's the passenger? Where are the diamonds and the coins? Gone like wisps of smoke. And all Chelm mutters, magic, or a nightmare. God have mercy on us all. Meanwhile, below, Satan is furious. Imbeciles, clumsy dolts. Maybe he's not beyond being bribed, but not that way. Not in the open, with a chance of being found out. Do you take him for an idiot? The two stupid imps are sentenced to a year of their own sulfur and brimstone. A second meeting is called. This time there is less enthusiasm. No yelling of me, 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 me. An elderly demon with a clear head and a long record accepts the assignment. Autumn days in Chelm, between the New Year and the Day of Atonement, the penitential days, the time of the soul's reckoning and of decisions in heaven. The mud lies knee-deep in the streets of Chelm. The skies above are disconsolate. And a beggar man, all skin and bones, God help us, comes into the town limping on crutches and drags himself from house to house, from shop to shop. At every 10th door he gets a crust, and he has no teeth. And at every 20th door a battered and faded kopeck, which almost slips out of his palsied fingers. Not that Chelm is uncharitable, but it is amply stocked and overstocked with paupers of its own. Paupers of standing, respectable paupers, the kind that starve in silence, widows and orphans of rabbis, relics of teachers and synagogue officials and saints and men of piety. The newcomer crawls from house to house the first day, the second, the third. The cold and wet go through and through him. The soaked and dripping lining sticks out of his tattered coat. His eyes sink deeper and deeper into their sockets. And then, suddenly, he falls down right in the middle of the marketplace, foaming at the mouth. A crowd gathers about him. One dashes water in his face. A second brings a cup of raisin wine. A third brings a knife to force between his teeth. Meanwhile, there are some who scream, Chelm! Chelm is Sodom and Gomorrah! And the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah awaited. And the beggar man is obviously dying. God in heaven, they can't let him die in the street. On the other hand, who's going to take him in? Householders shrink back. Every room in every house is overcrowded. And just then the rabbi comes up. And you have one guess where the beggar man winds up. So they carry him into the rabbi's one-room cottage, and there he lies in a trance. The rabbi sits at the table, a sacred book open before him. Every now and again he casts a glance at the sick man. Outside the cottage, a number of Jews linger uneasily. Who knows whether help will not be needed any moment. Night draws on. The rabbi is about to begin the evening prayer when he hears a stirring in the bed. He bends over the sick man compassionately, ear to lips. Rabbi, the sick man breathes, I have been a great sinner. I cannot die without confessing. The rabbi makes a gesture as if to call in witnesses. The sick man stops him. God forbid, just we two. And he tells the rabbi that all his life he has been a mendicant, and a fraudulent one. He begged for bread in the name of wife and children, and never had wife or child. Begged for dowries for the marrying off of his aging daughters. Collected funds for Talmudical academies and for institutions in Palestine. But not a kopeck of that money was ever seen by a poor scholar or by a needy resident of the Holy Land. He peddled Palestine soil, which the pious, since times immemorial, have put under their heads in their own coffins, and he had dug up the soil under the nearest hedge. And then he draws from under his ragged kapot a bag, saying, this is what I've collected and saved. He opens it. Wads of banknotes. Take it, Rabbi. Distribute it among the poor. Or do with it as you think fit. The Rabbi of Chelm leaps to the window with a joyous shout. He is suddenly 15 years younger. Jews! Charity money! Come in and count. But when the Jews enter, the beggar has vanished. So has the sack of money. Magic again. Another nightmare. Down below, Satan mutters. This time it was not in the open. No chance of being found out. And the black folk are in despair. Then Lilith, the woman demon, springs to the front. I'll bring him in. The old ways are the best. So it came to pass one day that the Rabbi of Chelm, feeling some disturbance in his health, sent the beadle for the healer, thinking that it might be well to do a little bloodletting. Meanwhile, the hour arrived for the afternoon prayers, and the rabbi was stationed at the 18 benedictions, which, as you know, the worshipper must repeat standing motionless with feet together and facing east. The door opened, and the young woman came in carrying a fowl. Obviously a ritual question. Is the fowl kosher or is it unkosher? The rabbi is absorbed in his prayers. The young woman will wait. And waiting, she begins to hum to herself, absent-mindedly, as it were. And what a voice! The voice of womanhood itself. Need I tell you that the Rabbi of Chelm doesn't even hear it? So the young woman, seemingly bored, sits down and begins to rock herself in the chair. The rocking and the humming fill the room. What of it? If a snake were to enter the room and bite the Rabbi of Chelm, do you think that his attention would be deflected from his prayers? The rabbi finishes the 18 benedictions, takes the 3 ritual steps backward, spits out ritually on ignorant idol worshippers, repeats the closing prayer, seats himself at the table, and says in his quiet, leisurely, good-humored way, let's see the fowl. The young woman leans forward to put the fowl in his hands. In the same good-humored voice, the rabbi says, put it on the table. A grown-up Jewish girl should know better than that. She begins to tell him where and how she got the fowl, and makes a long story of it, can't sit still, and begins to wander about the room as she talks. The voice fills every corner with music. The white teeth flash, the white body shines through the dress. Her sleeves are rolled up. A perfume as of precious spices rises from her flesh. She stands behind the rabbi and leans over. She breathes on him. And it's all wasted. The rabbi listens, examines the fowl, puts it back on the table and says, kosher. And you, young woman, had better see about getting yourself a husband. Maid and fowl disappear through the window. The rabbi smiles. He knows all about it. Again, an assembly of the black folk below. Some say this and some say that. And then a young and untried demon, without a feather in his hat, without a tooth dangling from his neck, asks, but hasn't the Rabbi of Chelm a single weakness? Stripped clean of weaknesses is the answer. No enjoyments? Maybe the ritual steam bath on a Friday afternoon. The young demon persists. But hasn't he some special custom of his own, some harmless habit or trick? Say, like rolling bread pills after a meal while he says grace. Nobody's seen him eat. Probably has no such habit. And then suddenly Lilith recalls that when the perfume of her body assailed the nostrils of the rabbi, he took a pinch of snuff. That's it, exclaims the young demon, and vanishes. Every Friday afternoon, having bathed for the Sabbath, the Rabbi of Chelm used to go for a walk in the woods. He always took the same path between a wheat field and a cornfield. And as he walked, he repeated by heart, as pious Jews are wont to do on Friday afternoons, the Song of Songs. Now, knowing himself to be an absent-minded man, and fearing that some Friday afternoon he would wander out too far and fail to return in time for the reception of the Sabbath, a grievous transgression, he had created for his own protection a special device. He had measured the distance against the time it took to repeat the Song of Songs, and had found that a little less than halfway through the prayer, he came to a certain tree. There he would sit down, treat himself to a hearty pinch of snuff from his goat's horn snuff box, rest a while, then get up and return, saying the second half of the Song of Solomon. Thus he would get back exactly in time for the reception of the Sabbath. One fateful Friday, just before the Rabbi of Chelm set out for his walk, a spindly-legged little fellow, dressed like a German in derby hat and green-striped trousers, appeared on the scene, uprooted the tree above mentioned, and carried it out farther into the woods. He replanted it and sat himself down on the farther side. The rabbi, meanwhile, arrives on the spot where he has always found the tree hitherto. He is nearly halfway through the Song of Songs, and the tree he perceives is quite a distance off. He is shocked. Obviously, he has been repeating the prayer mechanically, rapidly, without absorption and contemplation, also a grievous transgression. He will do penance at once. He will refuse himself that pinch of snuff until he has reached the tree. His nose itches for the grateful tickle of the snuff. His heart is faint with longing, but no, not until he has reached the tree. His limbs are feeble, his steps totter, and all the time there is this itching and longing so that he can hardly see. And now, at last, he reaches the tree. He sits down and snatches the snuff box from his pocket, but his hands are all a-tremble, and just at that moment, a wind begins to blow from the other side of the tree. It's that miserable little German, of course, blowing, and the snuff box falls out of the rabbi's hand. He reaches for it. The wind grows stronger, and the box rolls away. The rabbi crawls after it on all fours, his body crying out for the strong taste of the snuff. The wretched little German grins and blows harder. Then suddenly he uproots the tree again and replants it in its proper place. The rabbi looks up, wondering what has happened to the tree. He perceives that it is night. The sky is studded with stars. The Sabbath has begun. The sun has gone down, and he has not even noticed it. So furiously has his heart been set on the pinch of snuff. But wait, my friends. The sin of the rabbi in failing to appear for the reception of the Sabbath was the lesser of the two sins into which his lust for snuff led him that evil day. For the demon kept blowing, the snuff box kept rolling, and the rabbi, crawling after it in anguish, went out beyond the limits of a permissible Sabbath walk. The brilliant young demon, returning to the nether regions, was at once entrusted with another highly important mission. Addressing the Mephitic assembly before his departure, the young and triumphant demon said, "Gentlemen, nobody ever stubs his toe against a mountain. It's the little lusts that bring a man down."
You have just heard the first in this Eternal Light series of 4 talks by Samuel, author and lecturer, on great Hasidic stories adapted from his book, Prince of the Ghetto, a study of the life and work of the great Yiddish writer I.L. Peretz, published by Alfred A. Knopf, Incorporated. We invite you to join us again next week for the second program in this Eternal Light series with Maurice Samuel. The Eternal Light is produced under the auspices of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. This pre-recorded program has been an NBC Public Affairs presentation.
is the NBC Radio Network.